expectations that we can't fulfill.
Yes, true.
I think we're ready to roll because time is of the essence, and I'm happy to see that we got a nice group together. Do we need to go around the table and introduce ourselves, or do we skip this part?
Might as well. There's
Okay.
not that many.
Okay, then we start on your end, David.
Okay. David Rylander from the School of Management.
Natalie Moline from English Speech and Foreign Languages.
Stephanie Compton, the library.
Charlotte Snyder, Family Sciences.
Aubrey Evans, Office of Teaching and Learning with Technology.
Elaine Cox, the library. Catherine Maston, Library and Information Studies.
Matt Mills, Biology.
Laura Trujillo Jenks, Teacher Education, and I'm luckily working with Yerg this semester.
Chris Reed, Library.
And that leaves me. No, well, we have Sandra. Maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Sandy Cesario from the College of Nursing.
Okay. And one more time for the people who just arrived late.
I'm Babs McAllister from the College of Nursing.
Okay, and I'm Jörg Walche, the director for the Center for Faculty Excellence. I'm the guy who sends out the email that you get placated with. Is that the term? Plastered? Something? Yeah.
Maybe.
And somebody commented the other day, oh, you've got the coolest name. And so, yeah, it's Jörg, and the last name is Walche, but it's hard. So I go by Jörg, Dr. Jörg, Maestro, whatever you want to call me. And I thought it's a good idea to set up these halfway informal discussions to just sit down and look at what we're doing here and whether that people run into the same kind of problems or successes, and it's good to share and reflect a little on what we're doing. So I'm really pleased that for the first inaugural setting we actually get a nice group together and that it will grow over time. It doesn't have to, but maybe word of mouth, you go back and say, that was a great session, I hope. I want to point out, first of all, greetings to Houston and Dallas again. I will try. I know that often when we do this video conferencing things, the people in the room forget that there's someone remotely connected. So I encourage everyone, if you say something, also to look at the screen or the camera so that people feel more included and not just like watching TV. And I'll try to do the same. Sometimes in the heat of the discussion, one might forget this, but feel free to chime in and say, hey, we are still here, something like this, so we know if it happens. I also want to make sure that you're aware of the fact that the session will be recorded, and so I hope that's okay with everyone. If you want to remain anonymous, you have to wear a mask. But I know that I got some people come and say, oh, I would love to come, but I can't. Or will there be a record? I'll be at a conference. And since we have the technology, I think at least we can try this out and record this and then make it accessible. Who knows what pearls of wisdom we come up with that other people can profit from later. So, and I keep you posted then when the files are available. We will line them up on our website. So we have the article that I sent out, and I hope everybody got it and also brought it so you can kind of refer to it. And I don't want to really, there will be sessions where we have a guest speaker giving an introduction, but here we already had the introduction, and I feel more like a facilitator or someone who kind of guides the discussion. I'm more interested in hearing what you have to say, what you make of this, whether it's something you agree with or whether you say, hey, there are many things missing, or I don't go for the warm approach. I want to be a tough taskmaster and so on. So I open this up now for whoever wants to chime in. What do you think of this article, The 9 Characteristics of a Great Teacher? Stephanie, you are itching to say something.
Well, I truly believe the respect for the student is helpful. We get to deal with a whole lot of different students at different ages, different places in life, and just trying to understand all the different environments they're coming from when we work with them. We're able to work with them most effectively.
Did you hear this? Do we have good sound to the remote locations? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So you would agree with this? And did anyone feel offended going through this? I mean, the first sentence, and I redacted it a little, but it's a little bit of a slap in the face, right? Or maybe it's just teaching is hard work, and some teachers never grow to be anything better than mediocre. Is that what you're talking to me? But maybe I'm just overly sensitive. But then it goes on, of course, to say, great teachers work tirelessly. Do you work tirelessly? Are you honing your skills? And be honest.
I think I wasn't talking to but yes. One tries to, I think, but it's still challenges sometimes.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you create a respectful environment when you're totally online?
I was waiting for this.
I'm glad
I know that
stepped on what you
some
stepped on.
people are, I knew that something would come up where you say, how do we create community in an online, 100% online environment? And so, well, do I have to answer this? Who's teaching online here? Who's-
You need to one of the main things I see in online classes, when I'm looking at entering my students and looking at other teaching, is that they are there for like the academic content piece, but they're not there for the social part. So you have to embed things into your course to get students engaged. Whatever kind of, the tools are kind of static, so get them engaged so that you can actually be there. And that can be a variety of things. Like we had Second Life for a while where we met on Little Island, and that was like the ultimate of social presence. But then there's the learning curve. So you've got to weigh and balance that frustration of what the students have to be able to know and do with what they need to have the community. We've done Mean, try to get engaged on Wiki, do their own blogs and talk to each other. You know, various kind of build on their school, their skills that they have from class. But it's outside of the content, really. It's the social presence.
Skype or any of those things with face-to-face interaction with each other?
Well, my students are starting to do that for their final assignment. I'm letting them use, find what works for them, and so some of them are just exchanging phone numbers, but that number they're not at least for periodic discussions on the group project.
Well, that's what I've found with my students. It's hit and miss. Some do, some don't want to. And then you've got that privacy issue. You know, if you give somebody your Skype name, they've got your Skype name.
Well, there's Winba Chat. There's chat built into
Collaborate.
Blackboard. Collaborate now. I used to Winba.
Google Hangouts is
Right. Google Hangouts out here is getting stronger. But are any of y'all requiring the students to interact with each other synchronously, but not on a wiki?
If it's an online class, you can't require synchronous because it's not scheduled in, but you can give them times, optional times that they can choose to meet. This is not group interaction, but Luisa Lucas, Espinosa, and Sociology do a lot with synchronous, with virtual office hours, where they have lots of times, and they'll sit at their computer with Hangouts, Collaborate, email, like everything they can have open, and it's whatever is convenient for the students. They're there, and they've had a lot of success with it. But that's different.
But now we're kind of moving into how do you create community, and that's not so much how do you create respect. And I think that even in an online environment, you put up certain guidelines where you say, look, if you chime in on the discussion board, for example, no F-bombs, be courteous, things like this, where you can set up certain parameters and then and monitor, right? Basically, moderate.
And I think you're right. It's a matter of how present is the faculty
Yeah.
in the online environment.
But I think the respect often comes down to the written interactions, whether it's email or how you respond in a discussion board, things like that. You just have to be really careful because, sometimes the intent or the nonverbal isn't present in what you write, and you're in an environment where you're doing a lot more written interaction with students rather than verbal interaction. So you have to be a lot more careful in how you write things, and does it come across, like I've had something where was just a matter of fact instructions, and it came across to somebody else reading it that I was being condescending or smart aleck about it when that wasn't the intent at all. I was just saying, oh, this is how you do it. But you can be hypersensitive sometimes when you're just seeing a written language and you read your own, what you read it your own way. So it's I think it's a much more delicate arena to show that respect, and it's something you've got to model too, because especially if they're interacting or they're posting or they're emailing, you give them the guidelines up front, but then you also model how to write a respectful email or a post and things like that, so they can see how you do that.
Communities of inquiry, not the theoretical frame, with the social presence and cognitive presence is what you're talking about. I think there's all these different kinds of presences that you need to have, just to be intentional about what it looks like.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
I think also students don't know about netiquette often. They think that they can email their prof or their classmates or post on Blackboard like they do with texting. So having something in your syllabus that talks about, without being too negative, don't do this, more like be sure to always include, stuff like that, that helps a lot, a real lot.
And the first week of class, if you've had some discussion, you can send an announcement with an example with the permission of that student, of course, and say, I really like so-and-so's post, or like have the tone that they used or whatnot.
They love being used as examples. Positive.
Good examples.
Well, it's what David said earlier. I found that often it's the model. How do you model certain behaviors? And I mean, I get this from faculty too. We are not without blame. People who just write, when is this going on? Or why is this not being recorded? How about a behavior? I enjoyed reading. But it's the same thing and with class. I don't like the students to write, dude, I miss class. What's for homework? But sometimes when you tell them, but you're right. On the other hand, you also that putting something in writing, you don't know what mood the recipient is in, so you have to be really careful. And being too formal doesn't hurt, I think. And instead of just spur of the moment. I show you. I explained it 3 times in class already. Dallas, so we have a new arrival in Houston who's hiding there, at least.
Hi, Nina Fredlin from nursing.
Hello. You want to chime in? Anything?
As far as the online connection or interaction, I think it makes a big difference. Here in Houston, the majority, at least the doctoral courses I'm involved in, are a hybrid or blended format. And I think it's a little bit different when you've met somebody in person and you've had interaction at a face-to-face and then do online versus totally online. I think it's a little bit different in how you establish that network and what is respect and what are the rules. I found that people are more animated and more talkative online if they've met face-to-face first, where they know each other in a face-to-face environment. And then the Blackboard discussions or online discussions seem to go or get going faster because they know the personalities more personally than they would if they only met online.
That's a good point. And maybe some people might say, I don't even care about having a community. I'm here to just master the material. So it depends. Dallas, anything? I don't want to put you on the spot. On the other hand, I want to encourage you to chime in.
I work at UW. I'm used to being on the spot. It's quite all right. I have 2 things. One is to build off of Sandy's comment. We teach, and part of our standard curriculum is an introduction to nursing research course. It's crafted to be 100% online, but the anxiety associated with that course was running very high. I have a couple of adjuncts in that course who have exceedingly high standards. They are practitioners in the community. And I found myself quickly being the middle woman in between some hot email conversations between the students and the adjunct faculty in that course. So just for fun, as a pilot, one of my favorite words, you can pilot anything, right, and ask permission later. As a pilot, we made it optional for students to attend a one-time Meet the Faculty a session. We had 100% attendance. Wow. It only lasted about 20 minutes, but all they did basically was see the people face to face and hear that they were there to support their learning, not to make their lives miserable. I haven't gotten an email, a contentious email I haven't had to negotiate contentious issues for the past 3 semesters that we've started that. So I know that's not the ideal world for online, because online is supposed to be 100% online, but I think if you make that optional, some people can benefit from it. And even the people that choose not to go or who cannot attend something like that, they're interacting by text or email with their fellow students, and they'll say, hey, did that adjunct seem as scary as I've heard? And they can help each other in that way to deal with those kind of issues. The other thing I think is super basic, and so maybe it doesn't need to be said, but I think the best way to build respect in the online environment is for us to have the responsibility to have a very tight syllabus. When we put something out in front of the students, it needs to be very clear what the deadlines are, what the expectations are, what the grading rubrics are, and to not play bait and switch in the middle of the semester. That is so disrespectful to the online student. I think if a faculty finds themselves having inherited a course perhaps that they really have not been able to completely retool, I think the best thing they can do is to be real with the students and say, this is my first time teaching the course. I've got the first 6 weeks locked down and I'm proud of it. Here are some key dates you're going to need to know. I give you my word that I'll have the rest of the course laid out for you by X date, and then do what you say you're going to do. So I know that we have to build in latitude because we're all human and real life happens to us and we can't all have everything perfect all the time. But ideally, if we could have our courses tight on launch day, I think that sends a tremendous message to the students that they are respected.
I think we are looking at this. It sounds like we should do a session solely on how do you do online stuff, how do you create community, and so on. And I would there was a good segue in there, though, what you just said about the expectation setting. That one of the points here, if we look on page 2, that number 4 says a teacher sets high expectations for all students, and that's something I think it's better received than someone who's lukewarm and changes in mid-course or say, oh, the deadline, don't take it too serious. But I would like to hear what you think about this.
I think there's a difference between high expectations and rigidity. I think we can be flexible and warm with our students and let them know that we really care more about their learning than the deadline, and still have high expectations. But I think those get confused sometimes.
But I think generally students will perform up to the level that you set for them. I think they're capable of doing a lot more than maybe they do sometimes because we don't give them that opportunity to shoot for something higher. In my graduate course, I tell them right up front, this is going to be probably the heaviest course you're going to have in the program. It's going to be a lot of work over a short amount of time, and I say, but you're going to do this and this. You're going to learn this. You're going to tell them what it's going to give them, and I get great response. They work their tails off, but at the end they're happy that they accomplished a whole lot more than they normally do. But they can do that if you set it high up front, explain why it's that high, and then enable them to reach that.
I think that's the trick, this kind of dialogue.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this. Not just throw something.
Communicate about it.
You said the rigidity where you think, why do you have these what seems like unreasonable demands? I want to throw out an anecdote, because I had a teacher that I really admired. I was tempted to take a Latin course. Don't ask me why. I already had it, but I thought I never tackled Latin. I want to do this, and I did it at the University of Colorado at Boulder, just out of who knows, because I heard good things about it. And since I was in comparative literature, I thought, that might come in handy. I will need a classical language. So to cut a long story short, the professor was very challenging. It was a graduate course, accelerated, and then I said, I want you to be on my master's committee as a language person. And he said, okay, I'm going to put together this thing for you. And he gave me Catullus and just a crazy amount of work to do. And I went and said, "You're crushing me. This is just a language portion. You know? I know you're good. I must challenge you." And I thought, that's great. But in a way, I had a chance to talk to him, and then I thought, oh, okay, if he kind of handed out this compliment, which made me work even harder, although I felt I can't. But just getting the positive feedback that made me work, and I said, well, you said this. You know, I'm there, and if it's really a challenge or you can't master because there's sickness or something going on, that we are able to listen and say, and I can give you a break. Or that I'm not rigid. I listen to reason. And yet, you have to make up for it, maybe. Something like this. I also want to wave at Houston again. Ainsley just walked in, and I'm so proud that I recognize somebody and actually remember the name, too. So,
thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
So that was my little anecdote that I like to tell, because I thought it somehow rang a bell. You know? I know you can do it, and I have to push you to get even better. And I think that's sometimes what students need to hear. That I noticed you, and I think you can achieve something instead of just being part of a faceless mass there, or what seems to them as a faceless mass. And online, of course, again, they are kind of faceless. But I found that when I teach hybrid classes, for example, and you might come and say, well, you know, some people are touchy. But people are not touchy putting all their pictures on Facebook. So I say, let's create a little roster of who is in this class, you know, so we can see each other, learn the name, and so on. But I'm kind of meandering. I don't want to monopolize the conversation.
I think it's really important, your example, it was individualized for you. And that's what our students want, and that's what's hard to do. But we do monitor and adjust, and we do allow for, not to cover the material, but we want to allow for learning to occur. So sometimes it does change, and it does change from what our syllabus is, because it's in relationship to student need. And so if you explain that to them, and I teach teachers who are going to be teachers, or students who are studying to be teachers, but if you explain to them why you're doing things, many times it helps with the respect, and it does increase the expectations. I expect you to be able, and sometimes it gets harder. It doesn't always get easier. I expect you to be able to do this because, or who wants to take the challenge? You might have a multi-tiered type of activity where students can pick how much of that cake they want to eat.
Yeah.
I was starting to say, what type of approach would you use to try to encourage, have the student want them to make the information theirs? Because I think that's when learning really happens.
One of the things that goes back to community is building in a group process so that they're actually responsible to each other, and you have to teach them specifically what to do. For example, we do an ABC method. We do it in class face-to-face, and I did it in online classes, where you acknowledge what the person says, you be specific, and you connect, and you follow up the question. So we hold them to those types of processes because it doesn't come naturally for them. Particularly these millennials, they don't talk, they text. So you have to teach them how to take that text understanding and put it, and I have them write it down, A, B, C. Sit in class and we'll practice talking to each other. And you can't use your phone because they'll text each other in class. But you set up group opportunities. They're very responsive to each other, many times more than even me. We're learning it's only certain contents appropriate for that too. Chemistry, right? Biology. So it depends on the discipline.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes it's easier in certain disciplines to get a group discussion going than in other.
So they really learn unless they want it to become their information.
I think a lot of it goes back to intent. You have to be intentional. You have to know what you want that outcome to be, and you have to be intentional to provide that environment so it can occur. So if you don't provide the environment, you're not there. What is it?
You can offer them opportunities to connect the content to their own personal
That's
life.
what I was going to say.
And then that's one way that community builds, and they start learning about each other through that too, and they build trust, and then they start helping.
One of the things that I like to do, I teach small grammar classes. And this last spring, I had a young man who returned from military duty. He felt like a fish out of water going into the university community and right into a graduate class. And and there were other students in the class. We introduced ourselves, and then I kind of monitored each student over the first month, watched their posts, actually had one-on-one emails with them, and then at one point in the course, as the final project was introduced, that male student contacted me and said, I think I'm going to drop because I don't think I can do that. And I just emailed straight back, yes, you can. I have seen you know how to do X, Y, and Z. I've seen you answer X, Y, and Z questions, and you did much better than these 5 people, and you have X, Y, Z history. You can do this. Call me with each step. And he called me with each step, and it was just a matter of building his confidence in himself. And then he got to step 2, and it was more of, am I doing this right? Step 3, what do you think? Step 4, I didn't hear from him. Step 5, he turned in the final, and it was perfect. And because he was able to accomplish something he didn't think he could accomplish, he applied for a job I had found out. He applied for a job and got it on the first try. And he's hadn't been in the workforce, he had been in the military all this time. And other areas. As faculty, we have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And you can do that in the smaller classes.
It's the thing, what you said, it's a small graduate class, so I can see how someone who says, well, I'm teaching 150 people in the intro to chemistry, whatever, I cannot call them every time they feel like they can't tackle their homework, but maybe they're the student positions can be changed. So depending on the class setup, it may or may not work. But it's kind of what you described as point 3, warm, accessible, and enthusiastic and caring, that you say, well, I see you as a person, not just as another guy who gives me trouble. And I try to help you over this hurdle. And I also wanted to point out earlier, somebody said, well, you have to be flexible, and I think flexible on one hand that you say, well, I have the syllabus, and I do insist on certain things, but I do want to check in whether this is working too. Maybe my demands are a little too high. Maybe people are crushed. And we had a discussion the other day, or it came up, about evaluations. And most people say, evaluations, and what do the students know? And it's just payback time. But I think evaluations, especially midterm evaluations, if you do something halfway through, are very, very helpful as feedback to say, am I losing these people? Do they know why we are doing certain things? And could I profit from getting some feedback from them? So am I able to shift gears, not just on a day-to-day basis, but also on the overall scheme? Can I adjust? And that's something that I'm interested in sometimes. What do you do? You come to class, nobody has read the text. So, well, no. Or they said, well, we tried.
Give a quiz.
Well, on what? They haven't read it, so they're all going to fail it.
How do you do it?
I tell them there's going to be a quiz, and then I call on them. I will call on them, and just because you look away doesn't mean I'm not going to call on you. And don't rely on the few people that tend to speak all the time, because those people, I will say, thank you so much. You're doing great. Can I hear from this side of the room? And then they're like, oh, all right then. So.
Anything?
I start to say one of the things I've learned in doing larger classes, graduate now, but was that I gave them homework with every chapter, and I made it due before we would finish the chapter. Okay, and most of them would admit that, well, basically that was the first time they'd opened the book when they had to do their homework, which is not somewhat normal in a very large class like that. But they basically got identified with the homework as they were receiving individual attention, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, I'm not sure how it all relates. I mean, it was topic driven and it was straight out of the book. doing anatomy and physiology, but they could find it if they searched the book, and it wasn't always the text. It was maybe a figure eight or Caesar in a figure or Caesar in text.
Sometimes I think if you give them homework, it shows, it sounds weird, it shows that you care. You know what I mean? Like you're a hard teacher, but you're doing this on purpose. And even though students complain, like, wow, she's going to check this. Because a lot of teachers don't check it. Don't even check discussion board posts. So when I'll say something, they're like, you read that? I'm like, well, yeah, you know. None of my other teachers have ever, and they could be lying, right? But still, I think they need that. I'm going to keep on you. Yeah.
One of the things that I have found that my students jump all over is when I give them a test that's in Blackboard and they get an answer wrong as I'm grading it, I will write feedback.
Yeah, they like that
with
too.
those questions. And I just gave 3 different tests, 1, 2, 3, and 1 and 2 to 3. And I just graded them on Monday. And I have gotten responses from 3 of 10 students asking for clarification on a feedback that I had written because they recognized they got it wrong and why, and were looking for a way to improve next time.
Yeah.
And that was just by writing something about what they got wrong in a little text.
Instead of just giving them a grade, which is so much easier, but not helpful to them. Yeah.
I got tickled at one of them. She says, I don't know why I was so stupid. I mean, it was self-reflection. It was wonderful.
It's good to have this kind of student because I also often see you go in there, you make little annotations, and they just say C minus.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I put this in there to help you.
Just depends.
So sometimes, but of course I go back and hope for the best for next time. Or grab these people and say, you know, you really, it's not just trial and error here. You know, there is room for improvement, and if you apply yourself. And we come back to this, the personal attention, to tell someone, no, I keep an eye on you. I think you have potential. They say, wow, hey,
And
talking to me?
Yeah, another sign of respect is grading time. Make sure you get the same grade within a reasonable amount of time after the
I agree.
semester. If you grade everything at the end of the semester, they're like, it's a sign of respect.
One of the tools I've found surprisingly helpful is the journal, because that gives me this one-on-one private place with the students, and I have learned what to tweak in my lessons, and and I'll come back with an announcement to clarify or whatever, and then I found what the circumstances are for the students being late. They have a safe place to kind of, it's to themselves, it's their own journal, but there's a place for me to comment and say, oh, thanks for letting me know, and and here's what we can do to help you over this hump and that kind of thing. And so it's become a very personal journey for the students, and it's this personal touch that makes all the difference, because then they know you're paying attention. I think I get the same thing where it's like they feel like no one's reading their posts, no one's grading them, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it just makes me sad.
Oh, I think it's true for some. I really do. I don't think everybody's lying about that.
Yeah, I don't.
Because I'm a doc student and I teach here, and so it does happen.
Catherine, by the way, teaches exclusively online, so you never get to see your students.
Right, but we've got a great sense of community in there, and now they're in groups of 4, and
so maybe I can recruit you.
I get to snoop on them to see what they're doing, and kind of, it's been.
As I said earlier, the online experience, it's a totally different ballpark, I think, and the hearing exams like this will help other people who feel left alone. I hear this, that people say, I can master the technology, but it doesn't mean, I don't know whether I'm teaching well, so that we also need people who are in this environment to share their expertise and say, this is what works for me, have you tried this? And that's what this is about too, where people come up with ideas and someone might say, oh, okay, I could use this tomorrow in class, and experiment. And since every class, every instructor, every set of students, I'm surprised to see that sometimes if you're teaching the same section back to back, and you kind of already know what works, you know which joke gets you a little laugh, and yet you walk into the next session and
It falls flat. That's so weird.
actually it's flipped around. So it's not that
So
this group
weird.
doesn't have a sense of it. It's just
Yeah.
amazing sometimes to see how, depending on the mood or
Yeah.
the mood. So, but the accessibility, that's interesting. I have a question for all of you. We make ourselves accessible, for example, in office hours. You have to say, I invite you, I want this personal connection. How many times do students actually show up? I'm always surprised that unless it's the end of the semester and they beg for extra credit, I could sit there alone. You know, you can plan on free time. It's so rare, even if you feel like I'm jovial, I'm welcoming. They have stuff to do, right? And that's what always surprises me. If my background is German, yeah. So well, I am German, and in German university there are no office hours. And if there's an office hour, you go there. There's a sign at the door. Sorry, I had to leave on an errand. This is 1 hour once per week, and nobody's gonna be there. And so I thought when I came here, the personal attention that I got in the States, in smaller seminars, suddenly made me blossom. And I actually took advantage of it. You know, you have a paper you have to write. Oh, I'm gonna go and check with Professor Stevenson what he really wants. You know, and I'm surprised that if you offer this and you say, well, test is coming up, I'm in my office, nobody shows up.
I think it's American tradition to have that office hours available. The times have changed so much. For the most part, except in certain areas, I know students just don't want to go. I mean, I've got a daughter in college, and I have to stay on her. You know, when she has some issue or question with a professor, I say, go see them in their office. Actually talk to them. She said, talk to them. Can I text? I'm like, no, go to their office and talk to them. But that generation, they don't want to go and have to talk to anybody, and so they don't come to office hours. Plus, you know, a lot of our students are working and have families, and they just don't have time. They're here, and they go to class, and they go to work, and they don't have time to try to fit in your office hours. So I think that's why we've gone from that traditional model of here are my office hours, come see me, to I'm here 24/7 by email, by text, by phone, or whatever, and there's some expectation that you're always going to be available out there in cyberspace for them whenever they need you, and that's hard to draw the line for some people. You know, how do you set office hours in that broad cyber environment now?
But I also tell people I talk faster than I can type, so it's in your own best interest to check in with me.
Good.
It's trademarked. Sometimes if you swing by.
Because it's obvious, but to say it, that's good.
Okay, so.
You said earlier that you had a faculty that had great success with office hours. Can you explain that?
And it really struck me because I taught for 10 years, I work with faculty here, and I mean, just across the board, students typically don't come to office hours, but Luis and Lucas Espinosa are twin brothers, doctoral students in sociology, and they have great success with office hours. And so, in my department, my supervisor, Keith Reestein, and I were like, how? Why is this working? So we actually asked them to study it and write an article about it. And I think they're still in the process of doing that. But so we picked their brains and said, what are you doing? And I think one of the elements is that they do use multiple platforms. They use Collaborate, they use Hangouts, they use email, they use whatever the students, are comfortable with. And they're also very comfortable with technology as well. And then I do think that they will bid with the students. If the student says, I work until 10 o'clock, I can only chat with you at 10:30, they'll say, okay, I'll chat with you, they'll make an appointment. They also have, I'm not saying anybody doesn't, they have wonderful, warm, charming personalities too. So I think they're just also very inviting and people want to interact with them. But yeah, if you ever see them around campus, just stop and say, I heard you have great success with office hours, and they'd love to tell you all about it.
Didn't they do a presentation, and isn't that archived?
I didn't know that it was archived.
I'm asking you because I was at their presentation.
Was it Was there a video camera in that one? Because I don't think we recorded that early, but.
I can't remember that far back. It's 2 months ago and it's gone.
Collecting ideas here for upcoming. I have the semester planned out. You saw that there are 2 more sessions, and I'm going to talk or advertise them again in a couple of minutes. Great ideas, or even if you have medium ideas, then run them by me, and we'll try to set something up so that it's actually topics that people are generally interested in. Yeah, so I need some feedback too. So I'm not going to end up sitting alone here. Anything from the remote locations? What do you say? You have more professional students, so some of them are in class, in clinic from 8 in the morning till 5 at night, so they're, or even longer. I don't know what the schedule is, but I hear that somebody.
You're right.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the problem. You said it'll always be, this meeting will be at noon on Wednesdays. The majority of our faculty are with those students in the clinical, so as far as nursing goes, we're on campus Monday and Tuesday, but the majority of the faculty are out in clinical settings Wednesday through Friday, Saturday. So the majority of our faculty would not be able to attend on Wednesday.
Yeah. Well,
I find that so interesting and some really helpful tips. I'm actually teaching 78 undergraduates face-to-face now, 25 graduate students in a hybrid format, and 8 doctoral students totally online. So I'm really getting a good chance this semester to compare and contrast all these different methodologies. And I must say, I really am enjoying the hybrid so much more. The all online is a real challenge, especially at the doctoral level when we have these practitioners that are so busy and they're in high-powered positions in a lot of cases, and we just are try to be real respectful, and I think just a lot of the things that you said about shifting gears and setting high expectations, but then how do you shift gears? And I guess my one question to the woman that talked about having multiple office hours, lots of office hours, and I guess my question is, can you give me an idea of what that means? Is that weekly? Is it a couple of times a week? How do you do that?
What if it's bridging across different time frames? Like maybe you have an hour on the weekend. Like I'm an instructional designer, and I get more emails from faculty on Saturday mornings than I do during the week, and that's great. I remember teaching. That's when I was working. So maybe like an hour on the weekend, and then maybe an hour kind of late during the week for those who work, and then maybe an hour in the morning. So maybe not necessarily like increasing your total number of hours, but just the different time frames that you offer them.
Well, I've been doing that with scheduling when assignments are due to give people an opportunity to get them in before they have to work the weekend or after they work the weekend, and not have them all due at the same time all the time. But that's helpful for the office hours too. Thank you.
Okay, well, we are coming to the end almost. I think that was a good discussion. I hope that nobody goes away now saying, why did he make us read the article? Why did we have to do homework and we didn't really use it? But it was a good springboard, I think. And that's the way I envision this, that I kind of send out a little thing just to get people in the right frame of mind, and then they come with ideas, but we can kind of meander and see where it takes us. I want to point out that I will be in Houston next week. That's my initial visit. There's a whole group going because there's a Board of Regents meeting, so I hope that I will run into you face to face. As we finalize the deal, I will actually find out where I'm gonna be and hopefully can meet with people. The library, somebody from the library said, "Oh, we can have you here, so it's easy for you to meet with people." And I'll be in Dallas again. There is a faculty spotlight luncheon coming up on the 9th of November that I will attend and hopefully meet with some interested faculty members. And so that's the idea in the long run, to have more of a presence on all 3 campuses. That sometimes maybe the discussion, this kind of brown bag or whatever event we do can actually originate from one of the other campuses and be broadcast back to Denton if there's interest, if somebody on your side says, oh, I want to do something. I'm a specialist in XYZ, let me present. And so in the long run, we play with the formats and just see what works best. And to come back to the timing, no time slot will ever work for everyone. Yeah, I looked at the survey that I sent out, and for every single time slot, about 20-30% will say, yeah, I can do it, the rest cannot. And I know that Saturday and Sundays are not very popular. My favorite. So we have to play around. When what it says for the 3 seminars that I scheduled, or brown bags, for this semester only, Wednesday is the time, and then we'll keep playing around so everybody gets a chance. You know? So we can say for the next 2 months or for the next 5 sessions, we do it on Tuesday morning, and since we can archive it, and if people feel like, well, it's worth posting it and then going back to it, at least people get a chance to catch up on what they might have been missing because they were at a conference or something like this, or were in class at the time. So I hope that works. And while I'm talking about it, on November 11th, please mark your calendars, and it's already in your email too, we will have a guest. Dr. Linda Rubin, the faculty ombudsperson, will come and start us off with a little peek at what it is. What does an ombudsperson actually do? It's such a funny word, and it's never used other than... She will talk about ombudsing, and just eliminating frictions in the academic workplace. So that's going to be very interesting. And on December 2, we will investigate how to cope with disruptive students. So that's also something I think many people might be interested in. And disruptive does not necessarily mean they are throwing stuff at me, but also technology is a disruption. Somebody, you're lecturing, or not lecturing, you're trying to have a discussion, you're trying to teach, and half of the people are just checking their Facebook or email, and that's hard for us also, I think, to deal with. And I'd be interested.
They think if they put it below the desk, we can't see.
Or in your bag.
Yeah. Like we're stupid.
Well, maybe you said something, they say, oh, that's interesting, I must Google it. What's the definition of ombuds? Yeah. So maybe they're doing something, maybe we can trick them into actually using the technology to be more involved. So that's coming up, and I think that's all I had to say for now. Any last, final summarizing statements from anyone?
Thank you.
Anything else you would like to share?
Thank you.
Okay, well then great. I think we had a good discussion, we had a good group, and I enjoyed this. I hope you can say the same. And I see you on November 11th at the latest. And and next week and the week after in Dallas and Houston. Bye-bye for now.
Bye now.
Bye.